And we're live. We're live with Cam Bagrie, best economist in New Zealand, and always so bloody generous. He's such a down-to-earth guy. I just message him and go, hey, do you want to do a Facebook Live? And he goes, yeah, okay. Yeah, ready now. So thanks, mate. Thanks for always being so generous with your time, because I'm sure this is these chats are really helpful to people. So I've got a couple of questions, actually, from people that knew that I was going to probably reach out to you tonight. And the first one is a pretty basic question. By the way, if you've just tuned in, it's Cam Bagrie, best economist in New Zealand. Great man. Are things improving?
Yeah, things are improving, but let's just say it's what we call in a less negative fashion. Yeah, so if I have a look at a pretty simple indicator out there is traffic volumes, heavy traffic, light traffic, whether we're on the roads or not. If we look at where we stood at alert level 4, traffic was down about 80%. Some regions, your rural-aligned regions, the old farmers, that sort of stuff, they were down about 70. But that gave a pretty good indication in regard to the economic hit that was getting dished out. The good news is that alert level 3, traffic volumes are down about 50%. Now that's an improvement from 80 to 70% down, but you're still 50% down. So we've got an awful long way to go before you're going to say you've got an economy going back to what you could call the so-called normal. And I guess we all know now that there is going to be no such thing as a normal going forward.
Are people still in la la land?
Yeah, I think some people are. Look, I put an article out in the weekend talking about the property market, because I had a look at a few pundits who were out there saying the property market they thought was going to hold in. That's just, I'm not quite sure what's a polite way of sort of expressing that. If you go back and have a look at the global financial crisis, house prices were down 10%. Queenstown was down close to 20%. Now, unemployment rate's going to be higher this time around. There's going to be a lot more financial stresses on households. Now, it's not a great economic story, but let's call a spade in regard to what's going on. Your house prices are up 10% in the last 12 months. There's some regions across New Zealand are up in excess of 20% in the last 12 months. And brace, for what goes up is going to come down. Now, for some people, that's going to be a hard luck story, but let's not forget there's an awful lot of other people who've been sitting on the sidelines, looking to get involved in the market. First home buyers been scratching their heads thinking, how the hell am I going to be able to afford a home? Well, good news for the next sort of few years, the market's going to be moving away from the sellers towards the buyers. If I look at a place such as Queenstown, Queenstown was down about 20% of the Asian crisis, 20% in the global financial crisis. This one's worse. I think Queenstown's going to be down at least 30. For people that might want to get that little piece of Central Otago, Queenstown paradise, might not be a bad story in regard to what's unfolding over the next sort of 12 to 24 months. There's always two sides to every coin, and quite often people forget about the other side of the coin. What spells despair for one side can be an opportunity for the other.
If people have got, a bit of spare money, I mean, is now actually a good time to invest in the stock market and things like that when things are actually, I mean, I know nothing about this, so that's why I'm talking to you, but like when things do sort of are bad, isn't that a good time to maybe invest and have a look at what might come to fruition in maybe 5 years, 10 years, if you're willing to sort of sit it out?
Yeah, well, I'm not a qualified financial advisor, so I can't.
You can be very careful.
But I'm going to give people some anyway. And the best financial advice I can give to anybody at the moment is to go get some proper financial advice. And I say that in all seriousness.
Oh, okay.
Now, it is critically important across New Zealand that we see the financial advisory community really step up and talk to their clients, because I'll tell you what, people are pretty nervous out there in regard to what's going on. I can tell people openly what I've been doing myself. I went within all my equity stuff I thought the market was getting ridiculous September last year. So I pulled the pin. I went conservative. Looked like an absolute muppet over October, November, December, January. Thought, oh God, I made one hell of a howling mistake here. And then February and March rolled in and Christmas turned up. In fact, the second Christmas turned up. Because all of a sudden, I was looking at being a buyer on the other side. Now, I got a little bit greedy. I waited for the market to come back down the other side, so I missed the rally up the other side. But what am I doing at the moment? I'm being patient. Seen these sort of things time and time again. Could the market go up? Yes. My inclination is I'm patient. I think this is going to be a long, drawn out, what I call a U or a L-shaped economic cycle. In that situation, don't think equities are going to be up too much, but that's my personal opinion and what I'm doing myself.
Hey, what about Buffett selling all his shares and dumping all his shares in all the airlines that he's invested in? What do you make of that? So he's just basically going, no, the world's changed, get rid of it.
Yeah, and that's a pretty good,
without reaction
the airlines.
Smartest
the important thing here was what he said was that the world has changed.
Yeah.
Right, and that to me in itself is a pretty big reason to be cautious about what's going on going forward across a lot of sectors. Now some sectors are going to do better than others. Obviously, anything involved in technology, because we're all sitting here using different platforms to connect, Zoom, Skype, the one we're on, or that we're using different, and we've accelerated the use of this sort of technology, which is probably something we should have been doing anyway. Online shopping is obviously going through the roof. Well, it probably should have been accelerated an awful lot quicker prior to COVID. So COVID has just been a bit of a lightning rod on some things, but of course it's a bit of a lightning bolt for other sectors like the airline industry. The planes are parked. We've had a really good airline in the form of Air New Zealand, right? I think they've done some tremendous things.
They have.
Bellwether for the tourism sector. But let's look at the bottom line here. This is the second time they've needed a government bailout.
Yeah, but this is pretty unusual.
Some structural stuff about the industry.
Is that fair though? This is a pretty unusual. This is a once in 100 years kind of event.
Yeah, it is, but it's still the second time.
Yeah, true.
It's not the first time.
No, that's.
And you're dead right that this is a 1 in 100, 1 in 200 year event, or is it? Because if you look at it, took us thousands of years to get the global population to be 1 billion. What tended to happen? We controlled population by having plagues, flus, wars, that sort of stuff. From about 1800, it's taken 220 odd years for the economy, so for the global population to go from 1 billion to 7.7 billion. Now, that is intensification on a massive scale. Global population projections are we're going to be close to 10 billion in 30 years. So you sit there and think about, okay, this is a pandemic, a virus, this sort of stuff. Well, when you get that sort of intensification around the globe, I suspect we could see a bit more of that going forward. So we need to think about how we're going to be ready for this sort of stuff down the track, because odds are, unfortunately, it's probably going to happen again.
I think you're right. I mean, they're talking about possibly a second wave of this in the not too distant future.
Yeah, well, New Zealand's got a pretty good chance of squashing it, but the real challenge for us is to keep it out. Real big emerging crisis here is going to be across low income countries around the globe.
What do you think about this New Zealand Aussie bubble? What could that mean? Because if we've got this bigger bubble where that could possibly help tourism, couldn't it? Because you've got the Aussies; they can't really go anywhere else for their holiday. And I know that aren't Australians our biggest tourists anyway, aren't they, at the moment?
Yeah, so Australia's our biggest inbound tourism market. Well, let's have a look at the numbers, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at tourism in New Zealand, $40 billion industry.
What? How much is that?
40 billion.
Yep.
Right. 23 is domestic, and 17 is international. So the 17 has basically disappeared. Now, the tourism market has now got basically three targets. Target one is to stimulate domestic tourism more. Now, that's going to be pretty damn hard because people are running down their leave balances and people don't have an awful lot of discretionary cash at the moment. They don't expect the domestic tourism market to pick up. The second target market is that all these New Zealanders, and I think from memory, there's about 3 million citizen trips a year overseas from New Zealand internationally. Well, we're not going to be travelling. So there's a potential wallet for those potential New Zealanders that used to go overseas that need to still take a holiday. So we go after them. And the third target is Australia, if we can get the Trans-Tasman bubble. So if you look at the numbers in Australia, there's about 11 million trips by Australians every year. New Zealand gets about 10 to 15% of that, I think 1.4, 1.5 million or something like that a year. If we can, get this sort of, bubble between New Zealand and Australia, and I still think we're a wee way away from that, so it's probably a 2021 story.
Oh, really?
It could help a lot. The big thing, though, we need to think strategically about, right? If we're going to do this sort of stuff, target local tourism and spending more domestically, we need to start to think about some basic things, i.e. lengthening the school holidays or making sure we're not rushing to the same region at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to start to think about splitting up when the school holidays are, making sure our holidays do not overlap with Australia, because we don't want to be competing, everybody rushing off down to Coronet Peak, Cadrona, Remarkables for that 2-week window, and then all of a sudden, Queenstown's like a dead duck outside of that 2-week window in July.
Yeah, it's very smart.
So think about what New Zealand's holiday season needs to look like. Think about maybe North Island versus South Island, and maybe North Island split that into two. So we try to lengthen out that period when we can take holidays. And I'll tell you what, from a pure consumer perspective, it'll be a much more pleasurable experience because there'll be fewer people on the slopes. The last thing we want is everybody clambering there, because for those 2 weeks, the mountain will be full. But it's that peripheral, it's the fringes that we need to be targeting.
City councils, what's it going to mean as far as rate rises in the next? How does that all work? How does that all?
Well, we've sort of got two groups of councils. One group of councils, I think's with the basic picture, and the basic picture is that this is not an environment to be putting up rates because there's a fair bit of financial stress out there. Yeah, you've got other councils that are saying, look, we still need to put up rates because we're going to fund these services, these investment projects, and by the way, we've got a fair bit of debt. Now, to me, a simple philosophy applies at the moment. The big need to support the small. We've got SMEs, households that are under pretty serious stress. There's now the environment where councils should be putting up rates. I'm sorry, get with the program. If you've got the ability to borrow a little bit more money in the near term, then do it. It's the right thing to do. If that means you need to sock it to ratepayers 3 years down the track, then we do it. But balance sheets the balance sheets of councils have got capability to absorb bigger hits than other people across New Zealand. And we're seeing central government's taking a big hit. They're borrowing poultice. Bank profits are dropping. The Reserve Bank is out there buying bonds. Commercial landlords, what are you getting? You're probably getting half your rent. Some tenants are not paying rent full stop. Your residential landlord, well, you can't put up the rent. And well, what if your tenant's not paying rent? Everybody's got skin in the game here of some sort of shape and form. But I just sit there thinking about, it's quite frankly ridiculous. Anybody thinks they should be putting up their any price increase. Look, if anybody that I deal with sent me a letter and said, oh, by the way, the cost of the service is going to be going up, boy, there's going to be a phone call from myself to them about what they need to be doing with that invoice, because there is no way.
Yeah, you did right. So then, what's your thoughts on higher taxes? Because obviously we need to, we're borrowing all this money. Someone needs to pay it back. So what's your view on maybe, how tax is going to be structured in the next 12, 18 months?
So if I have a look at and ideally, taxes would not need to move up in the next 5 years. Do I think that is a plausible scenario? The answer is probably no. The bottom line is that we're leaning on the government balance sheet pretty heavily over the coming few years, and by my calculations, I think they're going to end up borrowing an additional $100 billion over the next 4 years. How are they going to pay that money back? What are they going to do? Are they going to cut spending? Well, the answer is probably no. Are they going to sell assets? Well, the answer is definitely no. Are we going to get strong growth so they get strong tax revenue? Can't see that. What's the other option? Put up taxes. So I unfortunately think we're probably staring down the barrel where they'll do one of two things. Look, one, they'll either change the top marginal tax rate from sort of 33 cents to the dollar, maybe up somewhere closer to 40 cents, or else they'll bring in a new top marginal tax rate that's got a 4 in front of it, but maybe you need to be earning 150,000 before that threshold comes in.
Right.
But I think you brace for it on the other side. If you're earning a decent wicket, the government's going to expect to take a fair bit of money out of your pocket in order to pay back some of the borrowings that have been put on the table at the moment.
Hey, if you want to ask a question for too long, but just stick it in the comments section. Here's something from Mark Bunting, who's a good mate of mine and also a councillor at Hamilton City Council. He says, mate, could you ask Cam about the new labour force? I'm worried about all these shovel-ready projects government and councils are pumping money into without the shovel-ready workforce. Unemployed pilots and waiters aren't matched to the projects that need digger drivers and labourers.
Yeah, he's dead right. So if I have a look at your overall construction activity in the next 2 to 3 years is going to be down, but we're going to see a shift in the mix. So residential is going to decline. Commercial is, I suspect, pretty well going to collapse. But the government will step up to the plate and we'll see an awful lot more infrastructure style investment. So what are we going to need? We're going to need a skilled labour force to both manage those projects and do the work. Well, I'm hearing stories about an awful lot of people that have been engineers, the managers on all these projects up in Auckland. They're all foreigners, they're all internationals, they're buggered off home. Are they coming back? I'm not sure. So I don't think it's going to be that easy to transition a lot of these people from one part of the economy to the other. So these projects might be shovel ready in theory, but in practice, I suspect they're not going to be.
I've been asking you this, and you've always got to be very careful not to get too political with these things, because then you start offending a lot of people and it all goes pear-shaped. But I just want to ask you this. You had the key government who were pretty good at managing the finances. Do you think if they hadn't been so tight with stuff that would be in a worse position, or is that overstating things? The key English government, the way that they managed the finances, like they were. Do you know what I mean by that? I'm not an economist, so it probably doesn't.
It's a question of balance, right? So after the GFC, did we need to get the books back in order? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Now, we probably came a little bit too fixated with getting debt down, not realising there was a time to be investing not just in the economic side of New Zealand, but the social side of the ledger.
Yeah.
So we just took the balance a little bit too far out to one side. And what has that meant? We've had a bit of a legacy of underinvestment in key areas that needs to sort of ramp up.
Yes.
But you're really good at economic management. To be fair, though, a lot of the growth we were getting was out of just population migration, bums on seats, as opposed to doing things a bit smarter. The danger we've got at the moment is that political ideology dominates a little bit too much, as opposed to what's a clear economic plan in regard to how we're going to get this economy going again.
Hey, we're starting to get a few questions in now. Do you mind sticking around for a few more minutes?
Yeah, mate, I might have to have a sip of my wine halfway between those.
Legend. Okay. Let's have a look here. Sean, ask Cam on his prediction on the budget. Gee, that's a big call. That's a fairly broad. Geez, how would they tackle the budget?
Well, the stuff we need to see in the next week or so, we're going to need some sort of extension of the wage subsidy scheme, because otherwise, that scheme comes to an end in a bit over 4 weeks, and businesses need a fair bit of clarity on that sometime soon, because otherwise, watch out, you're going to see the unemployment rate absolutely skyrocket. But what we're going to need to see out of the budget is going to be what I call a bit of an economic plan. What does the other side of the story look like? The New Zealand economy at the moment, there's 3 things that we're focused on. One is crisis management, and part of the crisis management is not just about supporting businesses. It's about having a pretty clear healthcare-based plan in regard to traceability, that sort of stuff. So these bubbles can actually work, and not just about containing it internally, but keeping the damn things out on the other side. And if it does come back in, let's making sure we can trace it, so that we don't have to go back up to alert level 3 or 4 on the assumption we're going down to a 2. But we also need a bit of an economic plan. Businesses out there at the moment are looking and thinking, where the hell are we going here? What's going to be going on the other side? And one of my concerns at the moment is that we're going to see an awful lot of political ideology. We saw the other day that the government has now basically instructed Treasury, you don't need to do a cost-benefit analysis of all the policies which scares the bejesus out of me. Because I've got no problem with spending money, but it's got to be quality money on the other side. I want to make sure that the taxpayer, which I'm one, is going to be seeing value for money. The other thing is that we need to see some blue sky thinking. Just some different stuff. Right? You go back and you look at what do we see after the global financial crisis? A whole lot of people got together, and I can still remember, what did they come out of it? And they said they were going to build a bunch of cycle tracks. And my initial reaction I won't say it on air, but it wasn't that polite in regard to what I thought of that. Now, with hindsight, I was 100% wrong, because you look at what that's actually done around New Zealand, it's been absolutely fantastic. But we need to get people together and start thinking about the blue sky sort of stuff. As I said earlier on, tourism, trans-Tasman bubble, but let's start to think about some of the pragmatic things we might need to do on the other side, such as altering school holidays, to make sure if we embrace that sort of story, we can maximise it.
Hey, we've got Cam Bagrie, best economist in New Zealand, with me tonight. He's got a nice glass of wine with him, and he has agreed to stick around for a little bit longer, so we'll just milk it for as long as we can before he goes, Sean, I've got to go. So feel free to chuck a question in the comment section below, and I will ask him the question. This is from Catherine Lindsay Ryder. Has Cam got any advice in regards to young adults entering the workforce? Good question, Catherine.
Best thing I ever did when I entered the workforce was I got tied up with someone who took a little bit of interest in what I was going to be doing. And I found that a real big help in regard to using them as a sounding board. Wasn't what you call a sort of mentor, but they were just sort of there. And it wasn't just about showing me the ropes as I worked in a new organisation. It was about giving me a little bit of bigger picture guidance. And a lot of this is stuff when you're young, you probably take a little bit for sort of granted in regard to the right sort of behaviours at the right times, and when you sort of larrup it up and when you can't. But if it's someone coming out of joining the workforce at the moment, look, unfortunately, you're going to probably face an economic climate that people saw in the early 1990s. Things are going to be pretty damn tough in regard to finding a job. There's big portions of the population out there at the moment that haven't seen the unemployment rate move up too far. Unfortunately, there has been times in New Zealand's economic history where things have been completely different. Unemployment rate early 1990s got up 10, 11%. During the global financial crisis, we got up to 6.7. There's going to be a big structural shift in the labour market, but there's numerous structural shifts. We're going to see turbocharged employment in some areas. IT, this sort of stuff. Working from home is now a reality. But you start to think about what are prospects for the retail sector going forward.
What do you think about this working from home thing? Because I'll tell you this. I see businesses getting very excited going, hey, actually, we'll save a bit of rent here. We'll get people working from home. And I'll tell you this, I used to manage MediWorks Waikato. So I had a group of about 30 staff. And I went from that high energy, brainstorming ideas, the whole bit, to them working from home by myself. So I'm entering my 4th year of that. And this is what I would say. To begin with, it's bloody fantastic. You go, especially if you're in management, you go, someone not knocking on my door every 5 minutes asking for something. But as time goes on, I don't know if it's the greatest thing under the sun. I mean, and I've already got people now saying to me, God, I'm getting sick of these Zoom calls. We seem to have a Zoom call for absolutely everything. I just wonder if the saving that people think they're going to make from not having rent might actually cost them in collaboration and actually having people in together, having that energy. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think I'm mad? You probably do. Well, tell me, Cam. Give it.
Everybody's got their sort of, each of their own and different approaches, right? Look, if you're a bit of an introvert, working from home is, probably like Christmas.
Yeah.
If you're a massive extrovert, it's going to drive you nuts. You just need that people company around. Look, I'll take a picture, right? See if you can bloody see this. I'll show you my home office. Can you see this?
Is that your setup?
Yeah, that's what you can bloody do. You can get it. You can get it set up. Yeah, pretty damn good. And I get up early in the morning, right? Yeah, so you're looking at global markets first thing. I work, and then if the weather's okay, and it's been dreadful in Wellington for the past couple of days, so I haven't got out of the house, but I'll go for a walk for 2.5 hours. Up around the hills of Karori. You now name me a job where I can get out in the middle of the day, if the weather's nice, and go do bloody 2.5 hours worth of walking around. I'll work tonight. Quite late.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. No, I agree with you. There are benefits of it, and I have grown to like the lifestyle, and it gives you flexibility. And I actually really like working at night, so I sort of start my day later at maybe 10 o'clock, and then I go through till say 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever it is. Still get a decent day's work in, but I just structure it the way that I want to. So there are benefits there. I just think we need to be a little bit cautious, just because technically you can do something. And I see a lot of businesses that seem to be really excited about that. Well, technically we can have everybody working from home. Yep, that's good, but make sure you've got the right leadership. Make sure you've got the right culture. Otherwise, it can get pear-shaped pretty quickly, I reckon. But anyway,
the hardest thing I find is if the printer breaks down, and all of a sudden I've got to become the tech guru on site. That sort of stuff. Yeah.
Get the tech guy. I am the tech guy. Damn it. Okay. If you want to fire through a few questions, we're just going to milk them for as long as we possibly can until we go, Sean, I've had enough. Okay. I've got a few more questions coming in here. Let's have a look. George Berry George, I love how, and George, I don't even know you. How do you end up on this page? But that's great. How buggered, I like that. How buggered is the US dollar, and could we see a new global currency? Damn good question, George. What do you reckon?
You're asking George, or are you asking me?
No, I'm asking you.
No. Yeah, there's a firm option out there to replace the US dollar as the implicit reserve currency around the globe. The answer is no. Am I that upbeat on the US economy? The answer is no. Do I think the United States economy is buggered? The answer is no again. But I guess the way I think about the United States, the United States has been the modern day equivalent of the British Empire, the Roman Empire, and a whole lot of other empires we've seen in history. What do we know? At some stage, that empire is going to come to an end. Is that process, state of affairs around the corner in the next sort of 5 to 10 years? I think the answer is no. Is it going to happen in the next 30, 40, 50? I think the answer is yes.
Okay. You've given us half an hour of your time. I think that's more than enough. Now, people, if you own a company, if you work for a company and you think your company needs some insights about the economy and how it fits in with your industry, get hold of me at essentialtalent.co.nz, and we'll get Cam Bagrie to speak to your team. He didn't know I was going to give that plug tonight, but I thought I'd do it anyway because he's always so generous with his time. Thanks, Cam. You're a legend.
Mate, take care, and all the best to everybody's bubbles.
Good man. Thank you.
Take care. Cheers. Bye.